Chapter 2 of How I Found Livingstone. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. How I Found Livingstone. Travels, Adventures, and Discoveries in Central Africa, including 4 months' residence with Dr. Livingstone. By Sir Henry M. Stanley. Chapter 2. Zanzibar. On the morning of the 6th January, 1871, we were sailing through the channel that separates the fruitful island of Zanzibar from Africa. The highlands of the continent loomed like the lengthening shadow in the grey of dawn. The island lay on our left, distant but a mile, coming out of its shroud of foggy folds bit by bit as the day advanced, until it finally rose clearly into view, as fair in appearance as the fairest of the gems of creation. It appeared low, but not flat. There were gentle elevations cropping hither and yon above the languid but graceful tops of the cocoa trees that lined the margin of the island, and there were depressions visible at agreeable intervals, to indicate where a cool gloom might be found by those who sought relief from a hot sun, over which the sap-green water rolled itself with a constant murmur and moan. The island seemed buried under one deep stratum of verdure. The noble bosom of the strait bore several dhows speeding in and out of the bay of Zanzibar with bellying sails. Towards the south, above the sea-line of the horizon, there appeared the naked masts of several large ships, and to the east of these a dense mass of white, flap-topped houses. This was Zanzibar, the capital of the island, which soon resolved itself into a pretty large and compact city, with all the characteristics of Arab architecture. Above some of the largest houses lining the bay front of the city streamed the blood-red banner of the Sultan, Said Berghash, and the flags of the American, English, North German Confederation, and French consulates. In the harbour were 13 large ships, 4 Zanzibar men-of-war, 1 English man-of-war, the Nymph, 2 American, 1 French, 1 Portuguese, 2 English, and 2 German merchantmen, besides numerous dhows hailing from Johanna and Mayotte of the Comoro Islands, dhows from Muscat and Cutch traders between India, the Persian Gulf, and Zanzibar. It was with the spirit of true hospitality and courtesy that Captain Francis R. Webb, United States Consul, formerly of the United States Navy, received me. Had this gentleman not rendered me such needful service, I must have condescended to take board and lodging at a house known as Charlie's, called after the proprietor, a Frenchman, who has won considerable local notoriety for harbouring penniless itinerants, and manifesting a kindly spirit always, though hidden under such a rugged front, or I should have been obliged to pitch my double-clothed American drill tent on the sand beach of this tropical island, which was by no means a desirable thing. But Captain Webb's opportune proposal to make his commodious and comfortable house my own, to enjoy myself, with the request that I would call for whatever I might require, obviated all unpleasant alternatives. One day's life at Zanzibar made me thoroughly conscious of my ignorance respecting African people and things in general. I imagined I had read Burton and Speke through fairly well, and that consequently I had penetrated the meaning, the full importance and grandeur, of the work I was about to be engaged upon. But my estimates, for instance, based upon book information, were simply ridiculous. Fanciful images of African attractions were soon dissipated, anticipated pleasures vanished, and all crude ideas began to resolve themselves into shape. I strolled through the city. My general impressions are of crooked, narrow lanes, whitewashed houses, mortar-plastered streets in the clean quarter, of seeing alcoves on each side, with deep recesses, with a foreground of red-turbaned banyans, and a background of flimsy cottons, prints, calicoes, domestics, and what not, or of floors crowded with ivory tusks, or of dark corners with a pile of unginned and loose cotton, or of stores of crockery, nails, cheap brummagem-ware, tools, etc., in what I call the banyan quarter, of streets smelling very strong, in fact exceedingly malodorous, with steaming yellow and black bodies and woolly heads sitting at the doors of miserable huts, chatting, laughing, bargaining, scolding, with a compound smell of hides, tar, filth, and vegetable refuse. In the negro quarter, of streets lined with tall, solid-looking houses, flat-roofed, of great carved doors with large brass knockers, with bobs sitting cross-legged watching the dark entrance to their masters' houses, of a shallow sea inlet, with some dhows, canoes, boats, an odd steam tub or two, leaning over on their sides in a sea of mud which the tide has just left behind it, of a place called Mzani Moya, one cocoa tree, whither Europeans wend on evenings with most languid steps, to inhale the sweet air that glides over the sea, while the day is dying and the red sun is sinking westward; of a few graves of dead sailors, who paid the forfeit of their lives upon their arrival in this land; of a tall house wherein lives Dr. Tozor, missionary bishop of Central Africa, and his school of little Africans; and of many other things, which got together into such a tangle, that I had to go to sleep, lest I should never be able to separate the moving images, the Arab from the African from the Banyan from the Hindi from the European, etc. Zanzibar is the Baghdad, the Isfahan, the Stambul, if you like, of East Africa. It is the great mart which invites the ivory traders from the African interior. To this market come the gum copal, the hides, the orchilla weed, the timber, and the black slaves from Africa. Baghdad had great silk bazaars; Zanzibar has her ivory bazaars. Baghdad once traded in jewels; Zanzibar trades in gum copal. Stambul imported Circassian and Georgian slaves; Zanzibar imports black beauties from Ihayao, Ugindi, Ugogo, Unyamwezi, and Gala. The same mode of commerce obtains here as in all Mohammedan countries. Nay, the mode was in vogue long before Moses was born. The Arab never changes. He brought the custom of his forefathers with him when he came to live on this island. He is as much of an Arab here as at Muscat or Baghdad. Wherever he goes to live he carries with him his harem, his religion, his long robe, his shirt, his slippers, and his dagger. If he penetrates Africa, not all the ridicule of the negroes can make him change his modes of life. Yet the land has not become Oriental. The Arab has not been able to change the atmosphere. The land is semi-African in aspect; the city is but semi-Arabian. To a newcomer into Africa, the Muscat Arabs of Zanzibar are studies. There is a certain empressement about them which we must admire. They are mostly all travellers. There are but a few of them who have not been in many dangerous positions, as they penetrated Central Africa in search of the precious ivory, and their various experiences have given their features a certain unmistakable air of self-reliance, or of self-sufficiency. There is a calm, resolute, defiant, independent air about them, which wins unconsciously one's respect. The stories that some of these men could tell, I have often thought, would fill many a book of thrilling adventures. For the half-castes I have great contempt. They are neither black nor white, neither good nor bad, neither to be admired nor hated. They are all things at all times; they are always fawning on the great Arabs, and always cruel to those unfortunates brought under their yoke. If I saw a miserable, half-starved negro, I was always sure to be told he belonged to a half-caste. Cringing and hypocritical, cowardly and debased, treacherous and mean, I have always found him. He seems to be for ever ready to fall down and worship a rich Arab, but is relentless to a poor black slave. When he swears most, you may be sure he lies most, and yet this is the breed which is multiplied most at Zanzibar. The Banyan is a born trader, the beau ideal of a sharp money-making man. Money flows to his pockets as naturally as water down a steep. No pang of conscience will prevent him from cheating his fellow man. He excels a Jew, and his only rival in a market is a Parsee. An Arab is a babe to him. It is worth money to see him labour with all his energy, soul and body, to get advantage by the smallest fraction of a coin over a native. Possibly the native has a tusk, and it may weigh a couple of frasilahs, but though the scales indicate the weight, and the native declares solemnly that it must be more than 2 frasilahs, yet our Banyan will asseverate and vow that the native knows nothing whatever about it, and that the scales are wrong. He musters up a courage to lift it; it is a mere song, not much more than a frasilah. Come, he will say, close, man, take the money and go thy way. Art thou mad? If the native hesitates, he will scream in a fury; he pushes him about, spurns the ivory with contemptuous indifference; never was such an ado about nothing; but, though he tells the astounded native to be up and going, he never intends the ivory shall leave his shop. The Banyans exercise, of all other classes, most influence on the trade of Central Africa. With the exception of a very few rich Arabs, almost all other traders are subject to the pains and penalties which usury imposes. A trader desirous to make a journey into the interior, whether for slaves or ivory, gum copal, or orchilla weed, proposes to a Banyan to advance him $5,000, at a 50, 60, or 70% interest. The Banyan is safe enough not to lose, whether the speculation the trader is engaged upon pays or not. An experienced trader seldom loses, or if he has been unfortunate, through no deed of his own, he does not lose credit; with the help of the banyan, he is easily set on his feet again.